Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom, and totally awesome, try something new and talk about it Tuesday. So it's a sunny day here in Seattle, and we've been having a few days of rain, and it's expected to get up to 80 by Saturday. So I'm like totally excited about that. So what I tried this week is I am going to be moving soon, and I'm moving to Arizona. So long ago, I took Spanish. I took a couple of years of Spanish in high school. So now I've been trying to, I guess, kind of relearn, but maybe it's like learning it for the first time, Spanish via audio recordings. So I started this week, and one thing that I noticed is I do remember a lot of the words, the phrases, and I still have trouble with the words having genders. You know, I have trouble with that, and I have trouble if somebody is talking in several sentences because they talk too fast. Hopefully I'm going to get the hang of that, because I guess in the area where I'm planning to move, or in the general area, about 25% of the population speaks Spanish, so it'd probably be handy to know that. So we have a great show planned for today. My guest is Orlando Duchetto, and Orlando is a licensed NLP coaching trainer, a registered clinical hypnotherapist, and a design human engineer. He splits his time between his first love, being in front of a training room, and coaching online NLP practitioners and private clients worldwide. In 1997, Orlando completed his first practitioner of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, for business communication in Auckland, New Zealand. He furthered his skills in his career spanning corporate sales, the motor industry, and successful business startups, and now he resides in the UK. I met Orlando 3 years ago when I went to an NLP training in Florida for charisma enhancement, and it's the trainer training for NLP. I'd already taken NLP, but it's also training for speakers, and I was also trying to work on my terrible fear of speaking before I started my first radio show, which was later in 2017. And so when I went to this training in Orlando, the city, it was a very intimidating environment. When I walked in the first day, there were actually more people from different countries speaking different languages than there were people speaking English. And I think that probably really showed. I probably looked terrified that first day. And Orlando invited me to lunch that day. He was sitting next to me, and he invited me to lunch. And it turned out at the lunch that I ended up having lunch with, I don't know, I think there were 5 or 6 different guys from all different countries. I think there might have been one guy from the US, but there was New Zealand and Australia and Argentina. And so after having lunch with that, bunch of guys, I actually felt a lot more comfortable. So, and I noticed it was a little bit funny to me, but I understood that I did feel terrified. So I kind of understood that Orlando probably picked that up, but it was a little bit funny to me because that would usually be me in a situation where I felt more comfortable. I kind of always gravitate to the person that I feel is feeling uncomfortable, or people, and try to make them feel more comfortable. So I related to Orlando in that, and I observed him through the rest of the training that he did that with different people, that he would try to interact with them and make them feel comfortable. So I'm on to you, Orlando.
Thank you, Kate.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been a beautiful day here in the south of England. As you can see behind me, it's a little darker here at the moment. We're a little bit further behind or ahead. I forget which one.
A little bit. You're ahead.
Yeah. So we're about 11 p.m. here, but it's been a beautiful day with gorgeous sunshine. So very easy to be smiling while we're here.
Yes, and you live so close to the beach.
Oh yeah. 10 to 15 minutes walked tops, and even in the current environment, 2 weeks ago, my favorite little coffee shack opened up, and with social distancing, of course, it was very good to get a cup of cappuccino back in my hand and sit down on the beach and enjoy a bit of time down there. Absolutely gorgeous.
So to start things off, can you tell us a little more about yourself and what brought you to your current path? When I met you in 2017, you were living in New Zealand, and your life was a little bit different.
Oh yeah, so it's just a little bit different. As you mentioned, I attended a practitioner in '97. I was in a sales role at the time, and it was neuro-linguistic programming for business communication. It was all very digital, and it was very specific towards sales, negotiation, business. That skill set served me incredibly well through my career. In saying that, it was a situation where the information was exceptionally brilliant. It was easy to utilize certain techniques in business, and there was a feeling that something was missing, that there was a component missing, that it could be better. But I knew enough to know that I was thoroughly interested and impressed, but I didn't know enough to know what next, where next, and where else I could find if there was something missing. So fast forward some 15, 17 years later, and I was living in South Canterbury in New Zealand, and the South Island there, and I had a very successful little air conditioning business running, and I was doing a wee bit of this type of work, if you like, in a very amateur scale on the side. And I made the decision to look at my life, prompted by a conversation with a very close friend of mine who said, well, you've got X, Y, and Z in your life. What next? And it was a question that really, time-wise, the other business that I had, I bought on a 10-year time frame, and we were up to year 9. And I knew that change was coming because I'd already made that decision, but I hadn't put a lot of time into planning what next. And I look back through my life to anything that might prompt an idea, anything that I hadn't completed. And instantly it came to me that I'd never really found out if the other thing was missing. I didn't even know what it was. But throughout my life, if there's ever been anything I've wanted to do, I've simply had a clean habit of finding the best person that I can to learn it from and take it from as close to the source as I could get. Well, the NLP training that I engaged in New Zealand was very good, and it was 4 parts removed from the originators, as it were. Someone had trained someone who had trained someone who had got in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that I'd see if, first off, if this Richard Bandler fella or this John Grindler guy were alive. They were the co-creators, but in 1997, I know this might be difficult for some younger listeners to understand, but YouTube didn't exist. The internet was a thing that you dialed up and sat there and got used to disappointment. However, things have changed, and jumping on YouTube, I was very quickly able to view a bit of Richard and John's work, and within 2 hours I'd actually contacted NLP Seminars International in Florida, or in New Jersey where they're based, and organised to attend a practitioner. And honestly, I went to that practitioner from New Zealand. It was a nice little 27-hour skip across the ocean, with the intent to have a nice holiday in Florida and simply find out if there was anything that was missing from the original training. I really hadn't thought a lot past that. Without knowing what I didn't know, I couldn't make a decision on what I hadn't found out yet.
So what year was that?
That was 2016, July.
Oh, okay. So just the year before I met you.
Only a year before, yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, I literally traveled to Florida. I actually randomly met Richard Bandler in the elevator of the hotel and had a very in-depth conversation, as men do. I said hello and he said hello, and then we dutifully ignored one another and got out of the lift. Well, the first day in that training, within 30 minutes, I'd made the decision that I knew what I was doing for the next decade or 2 of my life.
Wow.
Things fit very, very quickly. The entire fascination that I had found back in 97 was there tenfold, plus an entirely new perspective on what these skills could be and how they could work. I had also over the years, I had an interest in hypnotherapy, hypnosis, hypnotic language, and I'd read a few books and continued that as a sideline study, but still around a business context. Well, in that first day, it came to full awareness that everything I had learned was useful, and now I was adding to it at a phenomenal rate and speed, and I could use these skills everywhere. And it's something that I've very much taken to heart from that first day. A lot of people that know me hear me coin the phrase NLP anytime, anywhere. And to me, NLP is a model of successful behavior, where it's the study of the structure of successful behavior. And successful behaviors are going on around us all the time. This is not something for at work or in a therapy room or in one context. It's simply a model that can overlay any form of human behavior. And as long as I'm alive, one way or another, I'm behaving, good or bad. so yeah.
That. So with a successful career in business in New Zealand, what was there one trigger, motivating factor that motivated you to make the decision and decide to go in an entirely new direction, or was it a more gradual process?
No, to me it was quite a natural process. Throughout my life, many times I've had the desire to travel. Throughout my sales career in the automotive industry, I was traveling backwards and forwards to Japan, Australia, a popular destination. However, I'd never been to Europe, and until I traveled to Florida, that was the first trip that I'd been into the US. And it was a desire that I'd had for a long time, but I never had a reason big enough to do it. And I also was aware of a lot of people, friends that were, I guess, in late teens, early 20s from New Zealand. We like to do the big OE, where we finish university and we travel over to Europe or the States, and we do 2 years of traveling, or gap year, I think you might call it. Well, that wasn't, I didn't take that path. I didn't go down the university route, and that was never really of interest to me. And New Zealand's a pretty awesome little country. I was very intent on traveling throughout the country and experiencing what I could in the country where I started before going halfway around the world to see if something was different. And where I'm at now, I'm really glad I did that. Very, very glad. I do not doubt that those that traveled when they were younger had awesome experiences of different kinds in their own way. And for me, I'm very comfortable that I did it the right way for me.
Great. So was the life change, I know you did it shortly after that training, but did you make the decision spontaneously, or was it kind of brewing along? And how did you set things in motion? Because that's the problem that a lot of people have is starting, basically,
Yeah. The decision to travel was made for me a year before I went to Florida. In 2000, life was pretty crazy for me in New Zealand. Business was good. I had disposable income, and I decided 2015, 2016, I wanted to start traveling. It coincided with the end of a 10-year business, and then I made the decision that this is the time frame that I was going to travel. And I was married at the time. It was something that we had talked about, and then decisions were changed, and I didn't. I've always been a little, I like to call it determined. I think my father would call it stubborn in my decision. And for me, it was time. I was going to travel, and I wasn't going to do it by halves. It wasn't going to be a week in Europe and then pop back. And so with my life changing quite dramatically, with my marriage changing or dissolving, and then the catalyst, as I say, was decisions I was making in 2015 for what I wanted to do over the next 5 years. And then traveling to Florida, I knew I wanted to go back, and I was back there in 2017, of course, in March. I was back in July in 2017, and then I was back there again in February 2018. I stayed in Boca for a month with Dr. Eddie Perry, doing some body work there, and then back to the seminars in Orlando for March 2018. And instead of flying back to New Zealand that trip, I carried on, and 23rd of March made my way to Europe. So, it seems like a really quick thing, like a decision was just made and business was sold and marriage was changed, and I changed my whole life in 5 minutes. And from the outside looking in, it's very easy to see that because it appears to be a short space of time. But for a lot of people, I think when they're experiencing change, it's not that a decision takes 2 years. It's that things are changing and there is a decision point, but the acting on of that decision isn't always an instant effect. The day I chose that I was going to sell my business did not mean that someone turned up and handed me a wad of cash the next day. There is a process to go through, and it's months. It's not days or hours. So it was a dramatic change, I'll give you that. But it was actually a change that was 18 months to 2 years in transition. And through the NLP training, of course, with Dr. Richard Bandler, he often speaks about having a transition model rather than just making a snap decision and quitting jobs and then with no resources starting a new life. It's not a good plan. Yeah. But I think for a lot of people, dramatic change can, outside of a traumatic or major life event, things can appear, a dramatic change can appear very fast for other people, but that 2 years, if you're on the inside, can actually be a long 2 years.
Yeah. So did you have a vision of where you wanted to go, or were you just kind of embarking on an adventure?
No, before I left New Zealand, I'd organised that I would spend a month in Boca with Dr. Edie Perry, and then a month at the NLP seminars in Orlando, and then I would travel to the UK. I'd have 1 month in London to, as I call it, just to womble around and travel and play tube surprise and get off at different stations and see what was there. And then I would settle somewhere in the Surrey area where I had, the reason I chose that area was one of the Dr. Bandler's master trainers, Tina Taylor. I mentored with her for 12 months, so I wanted to be nearer the vicinity to cut down travel because I knew I didn't know my way around before I got here, so it made sense to be relatively close. And the plan was to come to the UK for 1 year. I had not a wish list, I had a list of countries that I was determined to get to, different things I wanted to see, people that I wanted to meet. The people, quite frankly, was before the countries. Got to Europe and found it's a little bigger than I was expecting. It was only about this big on the map.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, and I've been very, very blessed. I mean, from some of the wonderful people I met in Florida, and then ongoing supporting the trainings over here. I've been assisting with Dr. Bandler for since 2018 on his Florida and London events, and then with Paul McKenna here in London. I've met some incredible people that have been very good to me, and they just keep introducing me to other people. And of course, then I want to go and visit them as well, and then they live in a different country, so that adds to the list. And it's been 2 years, and I reckon I should get it done in about the next 8.
Oh, okay. Great. Yes, that's interesting. Orlando and I were talking before the show, and I was telling him what I was planning, but it's kind of put on hold for now. But part of my plan was to buy a house in Arizona and then rent it out for a year and go over to Europe and live for a year. Now, I don't know how that's working, but yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But I wouldn't stay forever.
Yeah, careful.
So, do you plan to go back to New Zealand, or?
I do. Now, as for whether that'll be a permanent move and when, that's become very fluid. My dad's still in New Zealand. I got a lot of good friends and family in New Zealand. And as long as that's the case, which God willing will be forever, I will continue to travel back there. I do intend to travel back and spend longer periods of time in New Zealand over the next few years. I'm not a big fan of being cold. It never used to concern me. Now, maybe call it age, call it maturity, call it what you will, but I crave a bit more warmth, and I do like the idea of spending a decade or so or longer enjoying summer and just skipping in between. That's a few years away, I think, at the moment. But look, New Zealand is an absolutely incredible place. And like I say, I'm very lucky. I've got some wonderful people on that side of the country, that side of the world, sorry. And there's a huge draw card to going back there. In saying that, the longer I'm here, the more I'm enjoying it here. And right now, in the industry that we're in the business that I have, the currency here in the UK makes it a lot easier to work and travel than it would do from going the other way. The pound is literally twice the New Zealand dollar. So traveling backwards and forwards becomes a lot more economical from this end. And this is such a gateway to Europe. New Zealand is a little restricted in where you can get in an airplane without sitting for 12 hours.
Yes, right. Yeah, definitely. So, is there an area where you haven't used your skills that you would like the opportunity to pursue?
Yeah. it would be specifically physiological pain. I'm fascinated by pain and what it means as a word to different people, how different people represent it. And to me, the completely natural crossover of physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, to me, they are all the same thing. This whole body and mind thing being different. Well, I've never been one to care for the argument about chickens and eggs. I mean, quite frankly, I don't care. I like chickens and eggs, and one makes the other and so forth. But
They're
pain is
definitely connected.
as I said earlier, I was very fortunate when I left New Zealand to spend a month with Dr. Edie Perry over in Boca Raton.
Mm-hmm.
And she's an exquisite body worker. And she very much opened up to me the sense of physiology and what we can interpret through our physiology that really had opened my eyes very, very wide to what is possible. And I became more fascinated with how people could have physiological pain or not. If for anyone that's ever sprained their ankle, the ankle swells and you can have bruising. And 3 days later, the pain level has significantly dropped, but the tissue is still under obvious trauma and the strength is not there for 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, whatever it may require. But the message is no longer pain. Well, how is that possible? Like, that doesn't make sense. I've made contact with a fellow over here that a few years back, he had a hernia operation with the only anesthetic was his own self-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing. Like, that's not just interesting, that's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And look, I have worked with, I was very lucky to work with the Macmillan Cancer Support Trust here for a year as a volunteer. And some of the results with clients were nothing short of just absolutely amazing in reduction of pain level, increased comfort, pain alleviation, if you like. And I know that there are people out there. Look, I'm astounded at the results that I've been able to gain in what I believe is a relatively short time. And from being around some very gifted people who have worked very hard, I've seen other things that are possible that I haven't engaged in yet. And one of the wee goals would be to be the directing hypnotherapist with a client having some form of surgery. And only because I'm not planning, touch wood, on having any surgery myself, so I'm going to have to let someone else be the patient bit.
Yeah.
But that's something I definitely want to do.
Yeah, that it is definitely fascinating, and there's a lot to learn. I took medical hypnosis, and it just kind of dabbled in it so far, but how it was explained to me, actually, before I took that course on an airplane, this physical therapist explained it to me this way, the pain thing. He said, pain is not real, that it is just a signal from our brain to our body to, give us a warning, to tell us that something isn't working right. And he told this story about a hiker in, I don't know, someplace in South America where they have a lot of poisonous snakes. And he was hiking and he felt like a little prick. And he didn't think anything of it because he was from the Pacific Northwest. And, if you feel a prick here, it's like a twig hit you or something. And, nothing comes of that. And so then when he was getting finished with his hike, his ankle started to hurt. And then, like an hour later, it was just welling up, twice its size. And when he got back to the trailhead place. They had to airlift him to a hospital because he had been bitten by a poisonous snake. And luckily they were able to figure out what snake it was, and he lived. But then he was back in the Pacific Northwest hiking, and he felt that similar little prick to his ankle. And it was, like he had hit a branch or something. And nothing really had happened, but his body said, uh-oh, last time that happened, I almost died. And so it went through that same process of swelling up to twice its size and, being painful, but nothing was really wrong. It was just the body sending the signal. And that it can happen either way, it can send a signal when nothing's wrong because it's had a previous experience, or it can miss a signal because it has the information that everything's all right.
Well, very much so. And our bodies, our brain, and to me, brain, by the way, is brain, spinal cord, our entire neurology. I don't believe that it's just the goopy thing in our head that does all the thinking. It used to be brains did all the thinking, and then, someone found that we've got brain cells effectively in our heart and in our gut. Well, they didn't used to be there. Well, they were. We just didn't know they were there. Where else are they going to turn up? We don't know that yet. Every 5 years, a Journal of Neuroscience tells us how many more neurons we've got in our brain. Well, it's not that the number's getting bigger, it's just that we're getting a little smarter about being able to detect them.
Yes.
Our bodies, however, our minds, they've been working in synergy for millennia to make what we are now. And look, the meat vessel that we have, it's 70% water and it runs on electrical signals. I mean, our eyeballs don't even see, for goodness sake. They detect light and electrical signals go back to our visual cortex, and we get an image in our mind that we don't know where that is, but we can all see the image. I mean, I think this is fascinating. In the realm of NLP, it very clearly, that the map is not the territory. Just because you see what's there doesn't mean that everyone's seeing the same thing. Well, our bodies are beautifully tuned that once they have an experience, we can remember to have that experience again, given a similar stimulus. That information, a twig can cause inflammation where it's not being a snake.
Yes.
The body doesn't know the difference. Well, you say, conversely, that can happen the other way.
The body to know the difference, but just on the basis of the information that it had in that series of events, it didn't know the difference.
Absolutely. And if anyone, for a human being that's ever experienced any form of chemical anesthetic, the body knows what to do. It's simply a state of mind going back to remember that and reproducing that state. And the body knows exactly what to do chemically and how to move that thought around. By simply learning a few skills, employing them with practice, anyone can learn this stuff. Like in day-to-day life, thankfully, not everyone has to alleviate pain or control symptoms, but a hell of a lot of people do. And by learning a few skills, I mean, look, when we work with a client one-on-one or training in front of a room of 10, 20, 40, 50, essentially it's the same thing on a different scale. Neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and hypnosis and design human engineering, these are tools of education. Because to use them, you've got to have some understanding of them and then practice them. And quite frankly, if you practice the skills, you don't need a full understanding of what biologically, neurologically is happening. If X produces Y and Y feels good and is a positive outcome, do more X. It's not a tough equation, but you've got to know what X is to be able to produce Y. And that's, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Exactly, yes. So what brings you the most pleasure, excitement, or satisfaction? Is it your training and coaching, or your private practice work?
Ooh, on a big generalization, and definitely on the whole training. I love being in front of a group of people, and I love seeing light bulbs come on. When you're working with people, and when you've got a group of people in front of you, and as they're learning for themselves and they're taking on that learning and they're starting to generate the next step themselves, rather than just sitting there bashing away, giving them a rote set of skills, a rote set of techniques, teaching them a set of skills so that they can start to interchange the blocks and put them together differently and come out with their own outcomes. That, to me, it's hugely, it just, there's no better feeling in the world than seeing people learn something that they can take, and you can discuss with them and see in their future how they're going to take this skill they might have learned for business, or they might have learned for a personal problem, might be anxiety, whatever it might be, and they can see how they can use that skill in so many different areas of their life. That being a part of someone receiving a gift like that, there's no denying that you're part of something bigger than yourself. It's not about teaching one person one skill. It's about taking something that you've learned and then making it your own in a way. I mean, in all respect to where the learning comes, but then delivering it in your own way, being yourself, and then seeing someone else be able to take that step for themselves. And I don't think I've ever had a more gratifying feeling in my life. It's just amazing.
Yes, great. So what's the difference, or is there one, between coaching and private practice?
From my perspective, the difference is the experience often that the client is seeking. If a client comes to me because they have anxiety and I have somewhat of a reputation of not tolerating much of that, generally they're looking for a therapeutic approach, and so they would come to my private practice. Doesn't necessarily mean they quite find therapy like they might have been expecting, but it will be more of a therapeutic approach to the situation. A big chunk of the clients that I work with are not looking to fix something specifically, they're looking to enhance something. They're already good at what they do, they want to get better at what they do. Whether it's a practitioner of NLP or in recent times, a lawyer or a person in sports, if they're already doing well, and what they've seen is the value of either performance psychology or coaching or top 2-inch training, mental agility. I mean, it's got a lot of different names now, and really it's about creating generative change, and that is taking something that's already working and finding ways to improve it.
Okay. I didn't know what you were going to say to that, but it does make sense now. I didn't differentiate it that way, but I have two different businesses. I have Embrace Change Hypnosis and NLP, which would probably be more the private practice of yours. And then I have Soulfire Wisdom Life Coaching, which would be more like your coaching side.
Yeah, look, it's the majority of people majority of clients that I work with come by referral. So they've already got a fair idea of what they're getting themselves into. I'm very results driven. I'm very pragmatic. I want to know how we can test it, and I will test it. Because if it's not testable, then they're just paying money for me to say, "Ooh, you're amazing." Well, they got parents for that. I'm not interested in telling them they're amazing unless they can do something amazing. And if they are looking to make pervasive change in their life, then knowing where they want to go for a start is of penultimate interest, and not just one place. Where do they want to be going for the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years of their life? What direction do they want for themselves? What goals and outcomes do they want along the way? And is there anything that they want to leave behind? and it's getting, as I know that you do with your clients, possibly a slightly different approach, but what I'm about to say very similar. When people want to get rid of something, that's often a snap decision, or it's a very small piece of language to describe the experience they want to have. I don't want to feel bad ever again. Well, death will fix that, but that's not necessarily what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's.
But it's a matter of them drawing out and having a more full representation of what that little sentence actually meant. And a large chunk of the first session that I have with people, almost 50% of the time, is really establishing what that sentence they came in with means over time. And I've yet to have a client that hasn't begun the process of pervasive change all on their own, simply by having those questions asked, and they have to go inside and find things that fit for them, because it's not about me telling them your life will be better if you do X, Y, and Z, because once they leave, I may never see them again. I don't have to live their life, and they don't have to report into me. That's not the point. The point is that they become equipped with what they need to get what they want for the rest of their lives. And as a model of, call it therapy, practice, or coaching, to me, there's not a huge amount of difference in my description of each one of them. Many of my clients, even business clients that will come for business coaching, I'm still not entirely sure what that's supposed to be. In my mind's eye, business coaching is being coached on a specific business that they're in by a mentor that has experience in that business. What I'm asked to do in business coaching is help people make personal changes so they can extend themselves in their own business. Well, there's a fine line. Is that business or is it personal?
There's overlap, yes.
Because, they get to take those skills in their personal life as well.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the biggest lesson or awareness that you've taken away from this journey or transition that you've been progressing through?
Know what you want. And if you don't know exactly what it is, spend more time clarifying your direction and who you want to be and how you'll be acting as that person, than worrying about a specific skill or a specific job or whether the house will be on a particular street. Look, it's the world is getting smaller with the internet, etc., and it's a really big, wide, wonderful world out there. There's bad things happening to good people every day, but there's wonderful things happening every day as well. To me, it's become of paramount importance to be exactly who you are, because choose what that's going to be and recognize that no one in the world is ever going to come close to being as good at being you as you are. So one of the most powerful statements that I found to be very powerful with a lot of clients, and I use this regularly for myself. And look, this whole lockdown business was a great opportunity for this. Mm-hmm. The second day of lockdown, I sat down with a pen and paper and I asked myself the question: in 2 years' time, when I look back in 2 years' time on this period, whether it ends up being 3, 6, 9, 12 weeks, whatever it is, what will have I done that I'll be really happy with and that I'll be proud of? And those two questions are, for me, very powerful in defining actions that I take on a daily basis. And look, it's not about being a perfect being of light all the time. I like to think myself predominantly a good person, and I can be an ass as well. I can make mistakes. That's okay, as long as I don't keep making them too many times in the same direction. Listen to the people that are around you, but also sort of take that with a grain of salt, and in the sense that make sure that you're acting how you want to act for yourself, because no one else has to live with you, but you do. And it's a lifetime's a long time if you're not happy inside the body that you're doing it with. Learn to love yourself, learn to love your own flaws, choose what you want to be and do something towards it every day, you get to feel good every day. It doesn't mean that life's going to be perfect, but it's a heck of a lot more enjoyable when you're doing it by choice.
Exactly. Yes. So, what was the most difficult thing or the most difficult decision in making a big change like you have done?
To be honest, there wasn't much. By the time once I made the decision what I was going to do, there wasn't much difficult about it because it got very exciting. I mean, I was truly excited about it. But the day I got on the plane to leave New Zealand, I was amping with excitement. I just couldn't wait to get moving with the plane. You kind of go faster. Probably the biggest thing the biggest consideration that I had was I will be on the other side of the world. It's 2 days travel to get back. If something happens to someone that I love, I may not be able to get back. And interestingly, it was never really someone's death that worried me because, quite frankly, if someone's died, I'm not going to rush back for a funeral. It's how we conduct ourselves while we're alive, I think, is a little bit more important than rushing back to tell someone how you feel when they're dead. It just doesn't work for me very well. But this, again, the COVID situation I'd never dreamed of this happening specifically. I'm not sure anyone had, but this was the kind of thing I think that was playing in my mind was, what if I can't go back? I mean, right now I can make a decision to go back. New Zealand's COVID free, great stuff. Can't leave. I can't just get flights where you want to. And if
they probably wouldn't let you in.
Correct. But it's more so if family or friends were close friends were in hardship and I felt that I could be of use there, I knew it would play on my mind if I wasn't able to do that. And interestingly, I've recently had a couple of challenges just like that, and it's been an interesting one to cope with. And I must say that I feel very fortunate that with my travel, from the time I arrived in the UK, I started communicating with people on Zoom, and within months had clients around the world because, of course, I've met people all over the show. I've got clients in Spain, Norway, Indonesia, New Zealand, Australia, all over the show. So when things have gone a bit pear-shaped for people that I know back in New Zealand, I can find out via a text message, and within 10 minutes I can be sitting there talking to them like this. Now, it's not the same as being there, but I've moved around a lot in my life. And if you're a 2-hour drive away and you haven't got a car, you may as well be on the other side of the world. So, look, connection with people becomes of paramount importance. And unfortunately for a lot of people, and look, I've fallen prey to it myself to a degree, we move away and then maintain higher levels of contact with people that were just around the corner. Yeah. It's a strange thing, but it's, to me, I see the beauty in it and go, well, hey, at least I'm in touch more.
Yeah. So what would be the biggest gift or reward that's come of your experience?
The biggest gift or reward?
There doesn't have to be just one, but if one thing stands out.
Interestingly, when you ask that question, I'm scrolling through in my mind individuals, different people that I've met, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of a transition or a change or something that's been going on with them at the time. And the majority of people I'm thinking of, interestingly enough, the chances are I'll never see again. However, I probably grew up like a lot of people thinking that, one day I would change the world and blah, 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 blah. But what I have learned is the power in taking the time, slowing down, and having a skill set where a 15-minute conversation can change somebody's life. I've had conversations with people where one fellow that I contacted and asked him for a testimonial, he said, "Oh, no, I wouldn't be willing to give you one." And I said, "Oh, that's all right." He said, "I'd like to tell you why." And I said, "Oh, well, why is that?" And he said, "Well, I was planning on taking my own life, so I thought I'd pay for some coaching first." Now, there's not a lot of logic in that, but he figured that there was nothing to lose by spending the money.
Hmm.
And as a result of changes that he made, he's still here. And from my estimation, he's a great guy. Just got a little bit screwball and a few different ideas and things that were happening, and things got out of control and beyond the tools that he had at the time. Another lady I've been in touch with, I worked with a couple of years ago now, and for various different reasons was not able to have a child, not physiologically not able, but having a child was not going to be possible for her. I think we had 2 sessions totaling about 2 hours in total, and I am aware that she now has a 3-month-old daughter. That's amazing.
Yes, definitely.
Being allowed to be part of that. I think Joe Reggio said it beautifully. He's a trainer over in the States. Well, where you are somewhere. He came into the UK, and I caught up with Joe down in Brighton for a couple of days. And he said something that resonated with me very deeply, and that is, if you're working with someone using these skills, things sometimes get to a very deep level very quickly in a subject matter that the client wasn't expecting. He said, "I like to think of it as a garden. And if someone invites you into their space, into their garden, be very careful, because that place is sacred. And that weed you were about to stand on, it could be their most precious weed. You don't know if it's a weed or a plant. Tread very carefully."
Yes.
And that resonated with me very deeply. The conversations that I've had with people in bars, pubs, cafes, parks, down at the beach, and private practice rooms that have gone from surface level to very deep in a different direction very quickly, and being able to walk away having that person take themselves into a place that they are better off. I mean, that's something to be grateful for every day.
Yes, and I do know what you mean. It's a gift to see someone progress, to be able to leave you and deal with life in a new way, in a better way.
And then build, there's a lot of my clients I'm not in ongoing contact with, but it is lovely to catch up with people a year or 2 years later and find out that, they're not getting in touch because they need anything. They just, through social media or something in passing, they drop a note, and you jump onto their profile, see what they're up to, and they're away. Like, they're not just getting by, they're building the life that they want and living it. I mean, that's just awesome.
Yes, one thing that I've noticed with a lot of clients, and at first you just wonder about it, is like, I'd say at least half of all the clients that I see, they want to go and help other people. So you're not just, it's kind of like it's a contagious thing. You're
It is. Look, and the advice they give us on airplanes is absolutely brilliant and should certainly be adhered to when we're looking after ourselves or other people. And that is, if the mask drops down like this over your nose, and put it over your nose and mouth and put the straps aside, always ensure your safety mask is fitted before assisting others. There's a lot of truth in that. And it's a reasonable number of clients that I've worked with have made inquiries down the track as to how they can do something similar not always in a professional capacity, sometimes in a volunteer capacity, because they actually want to help other people. I spoke to a great guy last week. We connected on LinkedIn, and he lives in Brighton, and professionally and in a volunteer status, he works with people that have got problems with gambling and alcohol, but primarily with gambling. And he's done that for 15 years, following his own problem addiction with gambling and all sorts of colourful background and the rest that went with it. And the pleasure that he gets out of showing other people that they too can have a life. And he made a decision. He actually said to me, his decision was, I want to be part of society. And it was interesting to me that he didn't say again at the end of it. He never felt like he had been. So he had to go and find out, what does a person do, look like, sound like, act like, think like, if they are productive within society? And then he had to go and learn all of that, then do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's done it. You know, I mean, that's just awesome.
So, what's the big picture for you now? What's your, what's next?
Well, like I say, over the next 3 to 5 years, I'll continue. Well, once things adjust a little here again, I'll be putting on 2-day events up in London and around here on the South Coast, NLP and hypnosis fusion, just bringing the two of those skill sets together, and for various different reasons. That is trainings that are towards people that are actually looking to just simply learn the skills throughout their life, some that are looking specifically to use them in areas of anxiety or performance enhancement, just different seminars for different things. And up in London, hopefully this year, maybe next, just depends on how things change. We'll kick off practitioner trainings here. And over the next 3 to 5 years, I'd like to be doing that internationally. I've got a few contacts overseas where, obviously New Zealand and Australia, but other places further afield. And I'd like to spend the remainder of this first decade of this development, the 5 years, I'd like to be spending that simply training and traveling. And with the joy of Zoom and the internet, I'll continue the coaching with people, developing myself and developing in others. Even on my website, it says learn, share, and grow. I just believe it. You know, it just, to me, it's the lifestyle I dream of. I get to learn, I get to grow, I get to teach, I get to share. I don't really want for a hell of a lot more else. Now, of course, I'd also like to do it in different locations with sun and beaches and all the rest of it from time to time. But look, there are just so many wonderful places to travel, a big part of my life, and heavily motivated by the people that I meet and wanting to experience what they experience. So I think that'll do me through till about 2028 or so. Then I'll make another plan when we get a bit closer.
It sounds like you've got a plan and enough to keep you busy.
Oh, I'll definitely be busy, that's for sure.
So this is kind of a different question. So do you have any regrets? What would you say to someone contemplating a similarly big life change?
I don't know if it's possible to do as much research as you can before you get to the other end. If it's possible, speak to people as trustworthy as you can find in the location where you're going, in the industry that you want to get into, if that's what you're changing, and get as many different perspectives as you can so that you've got plenty of variety to choose from, and slow down in that process. The old prior preparation prevents poor performance. It's a good idea taking a little extra time for a plan. To be fair, there's not a heck of a lot that I would have done different, but it was a long time in planning. It was an idea that I had for almost 2 decades or a decade and a half, and it took me 1.5 to 2 years to define how I wanted to do that for myself. And looking back now, there were some things I could have done that would have increased my rate of progression, that I could have learned some things faster, I could have done things more efficiently. I don't know that there's anyone that couldn't say that in hindsight. But definitely anyone that's looking to make a major change in your life, if it's geographical, learn to say yes. If you want somewhere to feel good, if you want to move somewhere and to enjoy it, it's going to have to be familiar to you. I mean, Virginia Satir stated in the 70s, famous family therapist, that her belief was that the will to survive was not the strongest will, it was the will for familiarity. Strongly linked to beliefs. And if after weeks and months a place is still horribly unfamiliar, well, just in the description, it doesn't sound like it's going to get a whole lot better either. One thing I have noticed from moving around younger life from city to city and now country to country, your ability to just say yes will introduce you to the people that know the people. Many of the people that I said yes to when I first came to the state, when I say yes, would you like to go for a drink? Would you like to go for a meal? Come to the house for a barbecue? The answer is yes. Do you want to go rock climbing? Yes. It doesn't mean you have to climb up the rock, but meet the people, you know? If you want to do things that are high energy and a lot of activity, go and start involving yourself around those activities. The majority of people that have become I've been very fortunate in my life to meet some very, very close friends around the world. And well beyond my quota, I believe. I've done exceptionally well in that regard. And the majority of them are second or third introductions. I've said yes to something, I've gone to somewhere and I've met a couple of other people there, and one of them's become a friend for life. One or two of them have been the initial introductions, but the majority of them are from second or third introductions. It's not getting tied up in the, do I want to go to that person's house for that barbecue? I've just moved here, I'm not sure if I like them. Just quieten down inside, say yes, and go along and meet a few people. It doesn't mean that you have to be friends with them all. But once you meet a few more people, you meet a few more, and things start feeling a lot more familiar when you've got connection with people. It's something a very good friend of mine, Dr. Hisham Abdullah in Auckland, New Zealand, is a dentist and laser dentist there, trainer. And he and I were chatting about the concept of home. And an experience that he had from moving around the world and then settling in Auckland. And he one day realized that the realization was incredibly overwhelming when he realized that he felt that he was at home. And he said to me, well, how do you deal with that concept while you're traveling? And I said to him, well, to me, home is people, because people for me are the catalysts that give me the feeling that makes me feel like I'm at home. When I'm with my dad, I feel like I'm at home. When I'm with my brothers, my sisters, nephews, nieces, very close friends, I feel like I'm at home. I get the feeling of being home. It's safety, it's security, it's strength, it's power, it's all of those things at once, and I call it home. Quite often when you meet people, if there's a strong connection that you feel with that person, to me it starts bordering on a wee touch of that feeling of being at home. So I can feel very at home pretty much anywhere in the world. And knowing the cool thing about our brain and our neurology is that it doesn't tell the difference between what's happening on the outside, on the inside. If I'm somewhere that's really unfamiliar and I feel really uncomfortable, I'll just go inside and think about the people that mean the most to me. And I'll build a feeling of being at home on the inside. And I'm in a much better state to deal with whatever's going around me. It doesn't matter where you are or who you're with or who you're not with. You can choose how you feel. It's just a skill. And once you've got that skill, you can use it, and you can use it all the time. Yeah.
Yep, there you go, giving away all the big secrets. So, we're almost out of time. So if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
Ooh, just one.
Just one.
essentially to slow down. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter where you think you're going. If you slow down on the inside for just a few minutes every day, then you can use that time inside to think about where it is that you want to go and who you want to be. The invitation to slow down is to give yourself the opportunity to experience who you really want to be. If you were writing a book and you were the lead character, you are the hero in that story, how are you going to write about that person, and are you living that life? You may not have all the exterior things that go with it, but every hero in every story, they were who they were on the inside long before anything happened on the outside. And once you connect for me, connecting every day in a small way to that, there's something inherently powerful about waking up every morning and looking in the mirror and smiling, knowing that you are looking at your true self every morning. And some mornings you might feel a bit rough and you might not be too impressed with what you see, and your hair might not be right, and you can see straight through and past that into yourself and take a few moments to slow down and enjoy who you are.
Okay, well, that sounds like really good advice. And I want to thank you for being here today and sharing your story and the wisdom that you gained from your experience. And I lied. I said we were almost out of time. We're actually over time. So we're going to have to cut it off. But I do have a couple of quotes that I wanted to share with the listeners before we go. Times of transition are strenuous, but I love them. They are an opportunity to purge, rethink priorities, and be intentional about your habits. We can make our new normal any way we want. And that was said by Christian Armstrong. And then it is when we are in transition that we are most completely alive. And that was said by William Bridges. And so thank you again, Orlando. And I want to thank the audience for listening today. We have a great show planned for next week. Let me see. I'll be talking with Pamela Cummings, and we'll be talking about dream interpretation. So tune in next Tuesday, 3 p.m. for finding out what your dreams mean, and have a good week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.